Recapping what happened to Arizona basketball at Clemson and looking forward to another year and what Arizona fans can expect. All of that and more here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. This show is brought to you by Gametime. All right, now we got a lot to get to this show. After today, we were going to start just looking ahead for Arizona basketball and what all of this means. But first, I think we need to talk a little bit about where Arizona basketball is, what happened in that Clemson game, because I think there were certainly some things that we can learn from, some things that we can glean, and what all of that means. But first, let's be honest here. The Clemson game was a disappointing game because for a variety of reasons. Now, first, listen, in the NCAA tournament, and Arizona fans know this all too well, that Arizona, when you're in a one-game situation, anything can happen. We know that. And Arizona fans, I think there's probably been 4 or 5 times that Arizona's been the best team in the country, and it just didn't quite pan out the way that you were going to hope it would. I mean, I think in 1988, Arizona was probably the best team in the country, and obviously had a whole cold shooting game with Steve Kerr against Oklahoma. That did obviously translate out well. But you still made the Final Four. Then in 89, I think you probably had the best team in the country as well. And the Sweet 16 happened. Anderson Hunt happened. And that was kind of the start of that UNLV mini dynasty that I think, that obviously started to occur. Then after that, you could easily make the case, well, in 1998, I think Arizona had the best team in the country as well. That was a loaded team. You were returning everybody from a national championship game, loaded up and down. Mike Bibby, Jason Terry, Miles Simon, Michael Dickerson, up front, A.J. Bramlett, Bennett Davison, all of those dudes. And Arizona, didn't take Utah seriously, and they got smoked in the Elite Eight. And then after that, I think in 01, Arizona had the best team in the country. Gilbert Arenas, though, gets hurt. You make it to the national championship game. You lose to Duke. No harm in that one. 03, you could maybe make the case, and then maybe one or two of the Miller teams. But either way, you get the point. Things happen. You lose sometimes. You lose to teams that aren't as good as you. But what was frustrating in this Clemson game is that kind of all of Arizona's little issues kind of came to the forefront again. And I think that's what was frustrating for so many Wildcat fans, because Arizona got off to a slow start, which I still don't know how you get off to a slow start when you're in the Sweet 16. And Clemson just kind of, when you get up 13-3 or 29-16, whatever it is, and you're in that round, you're obviously playing a team that can play, and you kind of put yourself behind the 8 ball. And not only do you put yourself behind the 8 ball, I think you kind of, you don't give yourself a ton of margin for error. That's for sure. So there is certainly that. And then everything that happened, the seniors fell apart. Listen, I've been a big fan of Caleb Love on this show, and I think he did a lot of really good things. He was the conference player of the year. He was a 3rd-team All-American, but man, he went cold. And I think what was frustrating from an Arizona fan perspective is when you go 0 for 9 from the 3-point line, and these shots, it wasn't like they were rimming in and out, and you're like, man, he's going to get these ones going. These shots weren't even close. Not only were they not even close, they didn't, he could have shot 20 more of them, and you didn't have the sense that he was going to make any of those. Then after that, why didn't he drive to the basket? Again, I mean, I get that you're not going to totally change a player's style, but when he drove to the basket, when he got going there in the second half, to start the second half, and Arizona got back in it and briefly took the lead, that's what he was doing. He was getting to the hoop, he was causing problems, and he was forcing the Clemson defense to really honor him. But then they got away from that, and Clemson's coach Brownell said, basically, we knew that we couldn't guard them one-on-one, so we had to go to it and do a sagging zone and hope that that Arizona would fall for it, and Arizona fell for it. Arizona just started shooting threes, and none of these threes were going in, and Caleb Love was kind of indicative of that. I just wish that Arizona had not just had basically forced the issue on what Clemson was doing. Then we got to look at some of the other players. Pelle Larsson, listen, Pelle Larsson, take it for what it's worth. I was wrong on Pelle big picture. Pelle Larsson's a good basketball player, but Pelle Larsson also, when Arizona's been ousted in both of its games the last 3 years, Pelle's been terrible. There's really no other way to put it. Pelle was bad, and Pelle was really bad in this game. And it wasn't necessarily so much the offense, which wasn't good, but the defense. The defense really struggled. The defense was not good. And that's something from Pelle Larsson that I think that you expect should be there. Pelle Larsson should play good defense, and Pelle Larsson didn't play good defense at all. And I think that's, like I said, I think that's a little bit more of an issue with and then Kylan Boswell. Listen, this was a terrible season for Boswell. He had a couple good games here and there where you're like, all right, maybe he's snapping out of it, but way too often, he just wasn't there. He wasn't there for somebody to be accountable for. And not only was he not there, he wasn't held to account by Tommy Lloyd. We're going to get to the accountability factor here in a minute, but overall, I mean, he was just bad. And listen, this has been 3 straight years where Tommy Lloyd's squad has had really, really bad starting point guard play. And you're not going to win championships. You're not going to go far with bad starting point guard play. Listen, Kirk Kriisa is something that Kirk Kriisa was essentially 10-4. He'd shoot 37% from the field, wouldn't play good defense, and he would just bark and talk like he was killing it the entire time, when in actuality he wasn't. Kirk Kriisa was not a player that you were going to get to a Final Four with based off of anything. And then Kylan Boswell obviously has a lot more talent than Kirk Kriisa, but Kylan Boswell just, he got into his own head, and more so than anything, I'm not sure how seriously he took a lot of this stuff, because again, obviously everybody knows that he enjoys the college life. That's fine. But when it's kind of being detrimental to your play, then at some point that's got to be held into account. Then he shows up at the table as well. And not only does he show up, to the blackjack table, again, that to me was indicative of something that was even a bigger issue, which we're going to get to here in a minute. But that's something that, the tough love or the, just loving on players didn't really work when it came to Kylan Boswell. And there's that. But again, when you have a point guard that is playing that type of basketball, that's just not nearly good enough. I mean, you look at the teams that went to the Final Four here at the U of A, you had Steve Kerr at the point. You had Damon Stoudemire at the point. You had Mike Bibby. You had Jason Gardner. These were all guys that took their craft very, very seriously, and it showed in what they were able to do. Boswell, again, he's young. He's 18. I totally get all of that. But at the same time, there's also got to be a point when you got to kind of grow up to a certain degree if you want to be the point guard at the U of A. And that wasn't really something that I think we saw. But to me, we're going to get into Tommy Lloyd here in a minute, because I think Tommy Lloyd is, I hope he's going to be here for 35 years. That's what I think of Tommy Lloyd. But there are some things that we obviously need to address. But first, game time, my friends. Let's say that you're bummed that Arizona is not in the Final Four, just like we all are. But you're like, man, I'd still like to go. It's in Phoenix. It's right down the street. Heck, maybe even live up in enemy territory in Tempe. And you're like, man, I'd really like to go and check the game out. Game Time is here for you. Download the Game Time app today. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Again, you can go up to Glendale and you can check out the games. And listen, you can probably get a good price. There's always good little deals going on with Game Time. And not only are there good little deals going on with Game Time, I think it's something also that you're kind of excited about, because you're not just relegated to basketball. You could get concerts. Our good friend William Brad Alice has gone to concerts through Game Time. Again, download the Game Time app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. The epitome of thanking me later on this one, ladies and gentlemen. You will thank me later. Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, We're going to talk now a little bit about, just kind of the accountability on this roster. Now, the first thing that we got to talk about is Tommy Lloyd. Now, I'm always going to preface at this because there are some people that want to get rid of Tommy Lloyd. That is insane. This dude has won 30-something games his first 3 years as a college coach. He is up there in very rare territory. Tommy Lloyd is the man. Again, Tommy Lloyd is the man. There is, and anybody that doesn't get it, I don't know what to say because you're wrong. He is the man. But listen, I mean, there's some things that I think that we can sit here and say that probably need to be adjusted a little bit. And I think first and foremost, I think is a little bit of the accountability factor in that Tommy Lloyd runs a free-flowing style. He's a good dude. And again, I'm always going to go back to the fact that he's a good guy. And that is something that matters to me because, again, I don't really like watching. Listen, I know that swearing is swearing's a part of the game. I get it. Totally get it. No problem with it. But I also would much rather watch a nice coach and how he deals with players as opposed to somebody who's just letting off every single expletive-laced tirade, rant in the book at his players. That to me is just unbecoming. You watch certain coaches and it's just that to me is not it. And so there is that. But with Lloyd, though, I think you've also got to say that he's got to start holding players accountable a little bit more. And I hate to keep using this example, but we're going to keep using Kylan Boswell as an example because I think he's indicative of this. Boswell is an 18-year-old for sure, but Boswell also needs some guidance, I think it's fair to say. And not only does he need some guidance, I think it's fair to say that he is he was essentially allowed to do kind of whatever he wanted to do, at least on the court, and we'll get to off the court in a second. And by on the court, what I mean is on the court, he was bad. But every single game, you would go in there knowing he would go into the game knowing no matter what happened, I am going to start, I am going to play, and I am going to get my 20-plus minutes per game. And there were a lot of games this year where not only was he the worst player for Arizona, he was the worst player on the court. And that, to me, can't happen. And let's look at the Clemson game. He was terrible against Clemson. And, again, he's 18 years old. I get it. But there's no reason that he should have played 3 more minutes than Jaden Bradley. Literally no reason. Jaden Bradley was the best player on the court for Arizona, and Jaden Bradley is essentially splitting minutes with Kylan Boswell. That, to me, that makes no sense whatsoever because Boswell was scared to shoot. He wasn't looking to really make any impact, and Bradley was out there getting into the lane, getting buckets, playing awesome defense. By the way, he got screwed multiple times on bad calls in that Clemson game where you're like, whoa, wait a second, what was that? Jaden Bradley was the man, and Jaden Bradley was the one that was keeping Arizona in it. And then when you look at the box score and you see that he played 3 more minutes than Kylan Boswell, that to me is a little bit of a problem. That you can't just go into a season, in my opinion. And again, I'm going to keep saying this, Tommy Lloyd is the man, but you can't keep going into the season knowing that no matter what happens, I am going to play a certain amount of minutes, and that's obviously where it was with Boswell. And then let's just look off the court for a second. When Kylan Boswell showed up to that blackjack table with the hoodie on, he clearly knew that he shouldn't have been there, and it didn't really matter because I don't think that he had any fear of repercussion for what would happen if he was caught. And there was no repercussion. Now, again, you could say, well, it was dealt with behind the scenes, yada, yada, yada. You bench him then. He comes off the bench, whatever the case may be, he comes off the bench. You don't just say, well, we dealt with it behind the scenes. Well, the fact that he was more than okay with going to that blackjack table to begin with, to me, is the bigger issue. Because again, and on top of that, he wasn't benched. He played his normal allotment of minutes. He was allowed to be out there. And that just, he kind of called the coach's bluff in a certain way. And again, you could say, well, we yelled at him behind the scenes or, we made him run extra laps, whatever. The biggest tool that a coach has when it comes to disciplining a player is playing time. Every kid wants to play. Every kid wants to get out there on the court and play. And that is your biggest, let's just say what it is. That's your biggest trump card. That's your biggest thing that you could say, all right, this is how we're going to do this. And it didn't happen. I don't know anybody, honestly, on or off the record, that says that there's no way that he shouldn't have been benched there. And because honestly, they're right. He should have been benched. That's just the way it is. So between, being allowed to kind of do whatever you want on and off the court, and everybody's seen some of the pictures and whatnot, that's living, but there's just, and I think in a weird way, it's kind of a disservice because I believe in tough love. You can love on Kylan, but at the same time, you have to hold Kylan to account. And that just really never happened. And so there is that. That to me is the big thing with Lloyd going forward. Again, dude's awesome. Want him to be here for 35 years, but I think there also needs to be a respect amongst his players that, man, if I mess something up, if I don't do something right, then coach could yank me and I'm going to have to deal with the consequences. That is something that I think never really really occurred with this squad. Now, some of the other some of the other guys that I want to give a real, tip of the cap to, and any senior that was here that went through this, got to give them a ton of credit. Umar Ballo, leader of men. Listen, Umar Ballo not being able to make free throws was obviously a cause of great annoyance, I think, probably for U of A fans. But man, this guy was a warrior. And this, not only was he a warrior, again, every single game, you could essentially count on him to get you 15 points, 10 rebounds. And the way that he just improved throughout the year and throughout his career here, I think was very, very admirable. He just turned out to be a very good basketball player for the U of A. Listen, I doubt that he's probably going to come back, because if he comes back in this day and age of the transfer portal, you're probably going to lose multiple players that you don't want to lose. But assuming this was Umar's last game, I just want to give Umar a huge, huge tip of the cap, because he was really, really good for Arizona. And he's somebody, honestly, that I would love to have going into the Big 12 next year, because again, he's big, he's physical, he gets rebounds. You need people like that in the Big 12, but I certainly understand both sides of that argument. It is not I get it. And Keyshawn Johnson, another dude. I want to give Keyshawn a lot of credit. Keyshawn came in here. He was a leader. He was a good basketball player for Arizona. And I think ideally in the transfer portal, Arizona is going to get the another power forward that has somewhat of those, kind of that athleticism, that strong type feel. And I think that's what Arizona wants to get. Plus, I think Keyshawn Johnson is going to be a great recruiting tool for Tommy Lloyd and the University of Arizona, because the fact that he came in here and he was allowed to shoot threes. He was allowed to showcase a little bit more of his offense than he certainly was able to show while he was at San Diego State. And that's what Tommy Lloyd's going to be able to sell. Tommy Lloyd's going to be able to sell. Listen, he came in here. We allowed him to play we allowed him to showcase his game for the scouts. And if you're another player, why in the world wouldn't you want to be part of that? Because that's that in this day and age, you got to be able to show you can shoot. You got to be able to show you can defend. And I think Keyshawn Johnson was able to bolster his stock a great amount by being able to do that. So again, Keyshawn Johnson, a huge tip of the cap in what he was able to do. Now we're going to talk about we're going to do a brief little preview of some of the players coming back and a little bit more of all of that. But first, Amazon TV, my friends, Amazon TV. Okay, here's where we're at. With the in this day and age, we know that the world is kind of going away from streaming. Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV, your sports destination. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. This is again an awesome spot to be able to check things out. And again, in this day and age, streaming is the wave of the future. It might not be all the way here yet, but it is close enough. You're going to want to check it out, and you can get all kinds of events. You can get all kinds of sporting events. It's mind-numbing when you watch and you say, man, I can get that, I can get that, I can get that, I can get that. All of that. Again, check it out. Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV, your sports destination, and it's only getting bigger. So again, hop in there. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now looking ahead a little bit, but first, also next year, listen, I love the Arizona offense, but they got to get some better three-point shooters in there if they're going to shoot the amount of threes they do. Listen, there's nothing better than watching Tommy Lloyd's free-flowing offense, but you got to be able to have guys that can really consistently make it from three-point range. I would love to be able to see that, and I think that is something that Arizona fans as well would love to be able to see, is that. Now, as far as the roster goes for next season, I feel fairly comfortable in saying there's going to be a couple starters here that we will be very, very nice as you head into Big 12 play. The first one is Jaden Bradley. Love Jaden Bradley. Been a huge fan of Jaden Bradley all season, and not only been a huge fan of Jaden Bradley, just love what he brings from a toughness perspective, from a getting into the lane, from a getting, drawing fouls, whatever the case may be. Jaden Bradley was that dude. And not only was he that dude, defensively, he was that guy. Arizona didn't have anybody like him that had those kind of active hands that could swipe away the basketball, that could block shots, that could just do a variety of different things for Arizona. And he was able to do exactly that. And again, I think there's something to be said for that. Again, he was able to do exactly that. With him, I think that the one thing about him is he just kind of has that winner's mentality. He wants to take it. He wants to be able to win games. And he did that. He showed that on the biggest stage. Jaden Bradley was there for the University of Arizona. And not only was he there for the University of Arizona, he was there to be able to show that, hey, this is what we got to do. And not only is this what I got to do, I got to be able to make winning plays. And down the stretch against Dayton, down the stretch against Clemson, the dude who a lot of people said couldn't really score the ball was the one that was doing just that, scoring the ball, setting the pace on the defensive side of the floor as well. He's going to be much, much needed in the Big 12. And like I said, I don't know why he can't be a Jamal Shedd type player. Maybe he doesn't have quite the passing instincts, but defensively, I think he's right there. From a scoring perspective, I think he's right there. Big kudos to Jaden Bradley, though, because I think Jaden Bradley is exactly what Arizona needs. And then KJ Lewis is another guy. Both those dudes are going to start. KJ is perfect for the Big 12. Not only is KJ perfect for the Big 12, he's also somebody that I think it's fair to say at this stage in the game, Arizona needs more of, not less of. And I think this is going to be his last year at Arizona, but he's tough. He's physical. He embraces the moment. And he's another guy that probably should have played a little bit more this year than he actually did. But I get it. You're also going to, show some loyalty to the seniors. Those are two huge building blocks that Arizona has. Now, there's going to be some other players that wrap in there. I think with a Josan Sainon, I think that he's probably going to be your starting shooting guard. He is a bucket getter. He is a top 10 type prospect. Those are the guys that come in and generally start. That is my guess, at least, that is going to be your starting perimeter for the U of A. Then up front, it's going to be interesting to see. Arizona 1,000% is going to get an athletic, strong power forward. Not only are they going to get an athletic, strong power forward, wouldn't surprise me at all if Mo Crevis, a Dylan Anderson, and heck, I think Henry will probably be back as well. Those are going to be three of your big guys, but you got to get somebody athletic up front, somebody that can really test the rigors in the Big 12. So that's kind of where it's at. But overall, going on to the Big 12, it's going to be a drastically different experience. I think we all know that. But I'm also at the point now with Arizona where, Tommy Lloyd he's a reflective guy. I think he's going to look back at this season, and I think he'll make some changes. Like I said, all in on Tommy Lloyd. It's frustrating. I know everybody gets it, but listen, we got the right man for the job. And not only do we have the right man for the job, I think he's the right man for the next 30 years. We'll be back with you tomorrow, breaking down next season. You are listening to Locked On Wildcats.